Following yet another deadly aviation incident, this one at an airport in Scottsdale. One person killed, 3 more hurt when a jet owned by Motley Crue singer Vince Neil collided with another plane. NBC4's Robert Kovacic is in our newsroom now tracking the developments and the video from that fatal crash. Robert.
Carolyn, Vince Neil, the lead singer of that heavy metal band Motley Crue, was not on board, but his girlfriend and her friend were, suffering non-life-threatening injuries, we are told. Now, the surveillance video we're about to show you is the moment that Neil's private plane arrives in Arizona and the fatal collision that is now under investigation. Tonight, the NTSB on scene at Scottsdale Airport, trying to determine how this happened.
We just had an emergency.
Surveillance video shows a Learjet scraping the runway upon landing this afternoon, and then, according to the FAA, veers off the runway and slams into a Gulfstream jet.
Our thoughts and prayers for the individuals on the aircraft. It's certainly a tragedy that occurred.
The Learjet 35A was coming from Austin, Texas, and attempting to safely land when officials suspect something went wrong with the landing gear.
It appears that the left main gear failed upon landing, resulting in the accident.
The Learjet is owned by Motley Crue's Vince Neil, who was not on the plane, but his girlfriend and her friend were. In a statement, a representative says Vince Neil's thoughts and prayers go out to everyone involved and is grateful to first responders. JetPro tells NBC4 in a statement there were no injuries on board their Gulfstream that was parked on the ramp, but external damages were sustained to the aircraft. Now, right now, as we wait to learn more about the person killed and 2 critically injured, after deadly aviation incidents in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and Alaska, Scottsdale is now the 4th in less than 2 weeks.
This morning, the remains of all 10 people killed when a small plane crashed in Alaska have been recovered. Crews had been racing to get to the bodies before a winter storm hit the area. The single-engine turboprop plane was headed to Nome when it disappeared Thursday afternoon. It was found on an icy floe that's drifting about 5 miles a day, which created difficult conditions for recovery crews. The NTSB says it's too early to say what may have caused the crash, and right now they are working to get the wreckage to examine it.
Oh fuck! Oh fuck! Oh no 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 no! Oh, Tower, you're seeing this airplane just crash into 3. Oh my god! Oh my god!
So in this part of the documentary, we're going to highlight several different reasons that people believe, whether you want to call them the truth, conspiracies, or whatever. Several different reasons people believe that these things are taking place. And I'll give you, what I believe and my insight on it as well. Everything from mechanical failures to DEI. If you don't know what DEI, don't worry about it, we'll cover it. UAPs, if you don't know what UAPs, we'll cover it. Even SpaceX. Or maybe even like mechanical failures. So let's start with mechanical failures. And I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. Mechanical failure is when a machine or some mechanics fail. And there's been a lot of crazy incidents, so we're gonna highlight a few, man. Let's get into them.
Holy crap!
was sitting towards the back, and I was flying to LA. It was a 5-hour flight from the East Coast to the West Coast, and it was at night. And I remember waking up and it was just shaking. I don't know if it was turbulence, but I thought honestly that it was over with. And I was looking around the plane, and other people thought so too. I could just see how people was kind of like, the whole plane was just shaking, and it wasn't like the wash machine thing right there, but definitely, you know, mechanical failures can be extremely scary if you've been through one, man. It's like, you can't wait to land, you know what I'm saying? Let's get into chemtrails, or as they're known from scientifically, I guess I'll say, officially, they call them contrails. These are the things when you look in the sky and you see the planes flying with the trail of smoke or whatever that is, they say, and we'll get into it behind it. You know, these are what people call chemtrails. And it's rumored that these things allegedly manipulate and change the weather. You know what I mean? When the government wants it to snow or rain or whatever, I don't know, you know, allegedly they use chemtrails. And we'll just, you know, well, let's just get into some chemtrails and let's hear what a couple people got to say about them.
Look up. Those white lines left by planes, are they just water vapor or something more sinister? Some believe they're chemtrails, a secret government plot to control the weather for us. Sounds alarming, but experts say those trails are just frozen water vapor. Contrails, not chemtrails. How long they linger depends on the weather, not hidden chemicals. No evidence of chemicals, no secret agenda, just high-flying jets. Are chemtrails real?
It's almost like a religion of thought.
Leave shadows on the clouds.
Look to the heavens, lines in the sky that captivate conspiracy theorists. Chemtrails, followers convinced something evil and secret is going on.
See, and look it. It's got that pattern.
They believe the government or some shadow organization deliberately sprays chemicals to control our minds or to alter the weather.
Okay, I can hear you now. Why are we wasting time on this? Social media has become fertilizer for this conspiracy. Recent surveys indicate 1 in 5 Americans believe in this theory. Now, science is just starting to confront it. So, what are the facts? Let's verify with our experts.
Dr. Jeffrey Forrest, Chair of Aviation and Aerospace Science at Metro State in Denver. Dr. Ken Caldera, atmospheric scientist and professor at Stanford. These are not government agents. They are scientists. That's verified. But first, Chris Zadnik of Denver. He's a believer.
So I could see a line in the sky.
Yes,
right
2 of them.
Right
yes.
now. So what do you think is going on up there right now?
They do tend to put them in front of the sun, which makes sense if they're trying to block sunlight.
What would you say is your strongest piece of evidence proving that chemtrails are real?
I think, I honestly, it might seem a little bit crazy that I literally have almost 400 videos.
1, 2, 3. X means death.
What do you think is going on up there?
Well, what they say is that this is sort of a desperate measure to counteract global warming.
Zadnik is quick to say he doesn't trust the government. Can you blame the guy? After all, our government doesn't really have the greatest track record when it comes to telling the truth. Agent Orange, the Tuskegee syphilis study, the human plutonium injection experiments. I can go on and on. That's the government. But what about science?
Way back, this is a tight fit. Okay, pilots and scientists are uncomfortable talking about chemtrails.
What is that white line in the sky behind a plane?
Well, the white line behind a jet is a natural process that goes on with the relationship between the aerodynamics of the aircraft and the atmosphere.
They won't even say that word. Scientifically, they're called condensation trails. Contrails for short.
So what you're really doing is you're sort of artificially generating a cloud.
It's like a long white cloud. That's essentially what it is.
That's right.
As jet fuel burns, it produces mostly water vapor. Picture my mouth like a jet engine. I know that sounds weird, but as I exhale, my breath contains a lot of water, so we'll see something like a cloud. Sounds simple, right? Let's get scientific.
Jet fuel is mostly kerosene, a hydrocarbon. When planes burn jet fuel, they produce exhaust. That exhaust is mostly hot water vapor. That also contains carbon dioxide, trace amounts of sulfur, nitrogen, microscopic metal particles, and carbon. The water vapor molecules latch onto the particles like carbon, allowing the water in its gas form to collect into floating bits of liquid, or, because it's so cold, tiny ice crystals. That's condensation, when water vapor becomes a liquid or ice. And so you get a cloud, especially when the humidity and air temperature are just right. The higher level of humidity in the sky, the longer the water remains condensed. When humidity is really high, the trails look like a long cloud, which is why contrails appear in the sky for a while. Winds can make them expand.
That is also, I think, part of the fear factor that some people hook themselves into, because they see a contrail being formed and then hours later it's still there, and sometimes it's growing.
So what we see up there is not the government intentionally putting chemicals into the sky for geoengineering.
No.
I don't know why people, they have a scientific or technical question, and instead of going to the scientists, they'll find some crazy website and believe what the crazy website says.
Perhaps the most convincing and highly cited scientific evidence comes to us from this study conducted by atmospheric scientist Dr. Caldera. Out of 77 top atmospheric scientists across the globe, 98.7% of them categorically rejected the existence of a secret spraying program. That one holdout was a guy in Alaska.
He didn't think, oh, that means there must be a secret government spraying program. He's saying, oh, look, once I got a sample and there was stuff in it that I couldn't explain.
There's no accepted scientific evidence whatsoever that proves a covert program is real.
I really desperately want it to not be true.
So yeah, chemtrails, man, AKA, weather control. I never really looked into it until now, but a lot of people, really believe in it. And I always heard of weather control from the government, or from people putting that on the government, but I never knew that it could affect, the airplanes and aviations and helicopters. But who knows? They're up there flying around, dropping whatever that stuff is. It could possibly, result in planes having some kind of accidents, or it's just all very suspicious if you think about it. But yeah, those are chemtrails, and y'all let me know, man. What do y'all do y'all believe in chemtrails, or do you know anything about them? Could this be one of the reasons why these planes are falling out of the sky? Let me know. Next, let's get into SpaceX. Elon Musk. Now, it's funny because, Trump just came into office in the United States. And, him and Elon is like this now. He's even appointing Elon to certain tasks. And, Elon has he's a billionaire, but power is the name of the game. And being next to the president, that's a lot of power that come with it. Honestly, I think, I like Elon, but as of late, I'm kind of starting to look at, if y'all look at Elon, I'm not a clone type of guy. But does Elon even look like a real person? I'm just saying, I'm kind of getting like not a real person vibes. I ain't saying clone, like lab grown. I don't know, maybe that's too much, but he owns SpaceX, which has been making waves in the aviation and just space field. And it's funny because yesterday it was just announced that SpaceX is going to be stepping in and having the control over the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, which oversees anything that flies in the skies, over here in the United States. And that's kind of like concerning because he's just a scientist. I mean, not just a scientist / engineer, but not to take that from him, but like, I don't know. But come to find out, SpaceX got, fined allegedly. Well, they're looking to find, or we're looking to find them for 2 rockets that they shot off illegally without the government's consent. Let's get into it.
Earlier this morning, the FAA released a statement that highlighted 2 different safety requirements and the corresponding fines due to SpaceX not complying. While Starship has been in the news lately in relation to the FAA and certain delays, these new fines are actually related to specific Falcon 9 and Heavy operations that occurred around a year ago. While a fine of this size is insignificant in the grand scheme of things for a company like SpaceX, it does bring more attention to the topic and relationship between the FAA and the company. Here I'll go more in depth into these fines, other examples, future progress, and more. The FAA, or Federal Aviation Administration, is a government agency that manages the safety and efficiency of civil aviation and commercial space transportation in the United States. In other words, when it comes to approving launches, related infrastructure changes, certain procedures, etc., their input and approval is usually required. This morning, they released a statement saying, the Federal Aviation Administration proposes $633,009 in civil penalties against Space Exploration Technologies Corp., or SpaceX, for allegedly failing to follow its license requirements during 2 launches in 2023, in accordance with statutorily set civil penalty guidelines. Safety drives everything we do at the FAA, including a legal responsibility for the safety oversight of companies with commercial space transportation licenses, said the FAA Chief Counsel Mark Nichols. Failure of a company to comply with the safety requirements will result in consequences, he said. The statement then goes on to highlight the specific examples of SpaceX failing to comply. They first say, in May 2023, SpaceX submitted a request to revise its communications plan related to its license to launch from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. The proposed revisions included adding a new launch control room at Hangar X and removing the T-2 hour readiness poll from its procedures. On June 18, 2023, SpaceX used the unapproved launch control room for the PSN SAT-RIA mission and did not conduct the required T-2 hour poll. The FAA is proposing $350,000 in civil penalties, $175,000 for each alleged violation, they said. For context, that specific mission was a Falcon 9 launch that lifted off over a year ago on June 18, 2023. More specifically, in May 2023, SpaceX made it clear to the FAA that they intended to change the control room and T-2 hour readiness poll. However, by the next month in June, they still hadn't received approval and decided to just go through with the changes. As far as safety concerns go, realistically, this is a rocket with hundreds of successful launches under its belt. Looking at the second part of the fine, the FAA says, in July 2023, SpaceX submitted a request to revise its explosive site plan related to its license to launch from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The proposed revision reflected a newly constructed rocket propellant farm. On July 28, 2023, SpaceX used the unapproved rocket propellant farm for the EchoStar Jupiter mission. The FAA is proposing a $283,009 civil penalty. They finished by saying, SpaceX has 30 days to respond to the FAA after receiving the agency's enforcement letters. This mission was actually a Falcon Heavy launch with one of the heaviest geostationary satellites ever sent into space. Again, as highlighted by the FAA, it occurred over a year ago on July 28th. In terms of delays between the failure to comply and the FAA issuing these fines, it usually takes quite a bit of time. For example, in a completely different instance, SpaceX was fined $165,000 back in 2023 for a launch that happened in the middle of 2022. Focusing back on the recent fine, the second failure to comply is similar to the first. Again, SpaceX submitted a request to change some infrastructure, and then before it was approved, they made the change. This time, they made the request in July and launched later that same month. Again, while this fine is more of a slap on the wrist than anything, it highlights some of the struggles the company and agency face. They're trying to keep safety in mind while moving at a rapid pace. With ambitious future projects like Starship underway, speed on the regulatory side will play an important role in its progress and/or delays. If all that wasn't enough, on X, Elon responded to a tweet about these fines and said, SpaceX will be filing suit against the FAA for regulatory overreach. In another tweet, he said, more lawfare. In regard to this relationship, for the first time since Starship's maiden flight early last year, the time between a subsequent test flight has been more than the previous. Specifically, after Integrated Flight Test 1, it took 212 days of work, FAA approval, and preparation until the second launch in November. After that, it only took 117 days to launch a third time after the second attempt. Most recently, SpaceX managed to launch Starship again after only 84 days. As of right now, it's been 105 days since the last test flight. While some might find that concerning, the reality is there simply is much more work that needs to be done between this flight compared to the last. One of the biggest examples is preparation for a booster catch. Unlike practically all other mission milestones, when Starship has cleared the launch pad, an anomaly or explosion has a relatively small impact on the program. On a booster catch attempt, however, this could absolutely cause some damage to Stage 0 if something were to go wrong. Spending more time to build up the second tower and conduct even more booster catch tests with the arms could easily save months of time when compared to a rushed booster catch attempt. You then have the legal side with FAA approval. With this next flight, the fact that the booster would be returning back to land rather than the ocean is a change from all previous Starship launches. It's also a change that the FAA no doubt will be very strict on regarding general safety and what's necessary before they grant approval. In relation to this, in SpaceX's recent statement, they said, "The Starship and Super Heavy vehicles for Flight 5 have been ready to launch since the first week of August. The flight test will include our most ambitious objective yet, attempt to return the Super Heavy booster to the launch site and catch it in midair." They go on to acknowledge that this will be a singularly novel operation in the history of rocketry. SpaceX engineers have spent years preparing and months testing for the booster catch attempt, with technicians pouring tens of thousands of hours into building the infrastructure to maximize our chances for success. Every test comes with risk, especially those seeking to do something for the first time. SpaceX goes to the maximum extent possible on every flight to ensure that while we are accepting risk to our own hardware, we accept no compromises when it comes to ensuring public safety. They then mentioned, "It's understandable that such a unique operation would require additional time to analyze from a licensing perspective. Unfortunately, instead of focusing resources on critical safety analysis and collaborating on rational safeguards to protect both the public and the environment, the licensing process has been repeatedly derailed by issues ranging from the frivolous to the patently absurd." They finished by saying, "We recently received a launch license date estimate of late November from the FAA, the government agency responsible for licensing Starship flight tests. This is more than a 2-month delay to the previously communicated date of mid-September," they said. Recently, at an aerospace summit, Dan Murray, Executive Director of Operational Safety at the FAA's Office of Commercial Space Transportation, was quoted saying, "We work very well with SpaceX. We have a very strong dialogue with them. They get the majority of our resources because they're doing the majority of the operations. We are doing everything we can to work with them as efficiently as we can," he said. In a specific response to some of these statements from SpaceX, he mentioned, "We have a great dialogue with them. We prefer to have our dialogue directly with them." As far as the next Starship launch goes, it'll at least be a few months before any approval is granted from the agency. With future missions like Artemis relying on Starship to be ready, there are quite a few parties affected by the delay or speed of the program. Even though they are making impressive progress, if the company and the FAA can't find a way to work with each other in a timely manner, it could cause more significant issues in the future. Something to keep in mind as the company makes a push toward Integrated Flight Test 5. This morning, the FAA released a statement explaining over $600,000 in fines to SpaceX for a Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy launch back in 2023. They cited examples of the company failing to comply with certain licensing agreements after changes were made. At the same time as this happens, the company is trying to push toward the next Starship flight, which was recently delayed to late November. We will have to wait and see how it progresses and the impact it has on the space industry.
So you let me know, man. Is Elon Musk doing something? Like, why are these planes just all of a sudden falling out the sky? And they've been, crashing and stuff, but it's just getting weirder and weirder, and it's getting, it's becoming more of an occurrence, especially, as of recent. You know what I mean? If you've been paying attention. I don't know, y'all let me know in the comments, man. How y'all feel about Elon, SpaceX, and them controlling the FAA and regulating that situation? Let me know below. Next on deck, we're gonna get into DEI. DEI. And basically what DEI is the government being forced, to diversify the people that they hire for. It's kind of like equal opportunity in a sense. Now, after the DC Black Hawk helicopter crash in the end of January, Trump went on to speak about DEI, and he criticized it. He criticized DEI, and he was like, we need to have people in those positions, not just because of their color or because of, their gender, which is saying what he's saying, you know what I'm saying? We don't care if you're black or whatever, you need to be qualified. A lot of people don't agree, some people do agree. I actually do agree, but I don't think that he should have said it like that. Me personally, I don't care what color you are for whatever job you take, as long as you know what you're doing, you know what I'm saying? And that's not to take nothing from any other race. I'm not saying that black folks can't fly planes or work on planes, but I just feel like the most qualified should be there. And another crazy thing I heard was, I don't know how true this is, but I seen somebody put under a video that, actually the part 1 of the documentary, somebody put it under there. They said something about Boeing. Now, Boeing is a company that makes airplanes. The 737s and things like that, I think Boeing is the airplane that has had the most malfunctions and accidents and crashes, if you look it up. But I heard that Boeing is, or has been, hiring people who are less qualified, kind of along the lines of the people are trying to combine the DEI thing with the Boeing and who are people hiring. And let's just get into the DEI.
My administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. They have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses. You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so.
From day one, our country has slowly tried to live up to its founding fathers' vision in the Declaration of Independence. The vision that we are all created equal, having inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, no matter our status or background. We weren't close to that when this country was founded. We discriminated against African Americans, women, and others. But we made progress, like the 14th Amendment, the 19th Amendment, and the Civil Rights Act, and more recently, diversity, equity, and inclusion was added. But today, that last one was ended by an executive order of President Trump. So let's get into what DEI is and what DEI is not.
DEI is an umbrella term for plans to put equitable environments into our workplaces, something Dr. Uhuru Williams, founder of the Racial Justice Initiative at St. Thomas, is well versed in.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion simply ensures fairness in hiring practices. It doesn't establish quotas. It doesn't establish set-asides. It simply recognizes the importance of creating an environment where everyone feels valued and seen.
Its origin, as it pertains to work, is the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
I really wish that people would just dig into the language of the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
That dig brings you to Title 6 and 7 of that act that say discrimination is prohibited in employment based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And to know that's been around for 60 years should tell you working toward diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a new concept in this country. So to see it stricken from the federal government is something.
I never thought, and I'm not Pollyanna by any stretch of the imagination, that we would get to this point. This is very, very difficult.
The most recent data from the Government Accountability Office shows that federal employees aren't remarkably diverse. Nearly 68% of them are white, a clear majority.
To have the president come in and articulate, as so many believe, that fundamentally these programs are discriminatory against whites is simply not true. They do not entitle nor provide opportunities or jobs for individuals. They simply ensure fairness in hiring.
Fairness that also isn't just about white or black.
A large number of those who have benefited from these types of programs are white women, are minorities other than African Americans.
Now, in addition to all DEI programs being closed as of 90 minutes ago today at the federal level, remember, all staff working on those programs are now on paid leave. The private sector is not bucking this trend. Major companies like Meta, who owns Facebook and Instagram, Walmart, McDonald's, they have all ended their DEI programs as well.
Last but not least, we got UAPs, man. And now I'm really just finding out this term UAP probably about 5-6 days ago. If you don't know what UAP stands for, it stands for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, which is basically like UFO. You know what I mean? And I didn't know that there was so many pilots and so much occurrences of UAPs/UFOs on camera, spoken about by pilots and people that are up in the air. You know, you think of UFOs, you think of at nighttime, some aliens and lights, and no, but it's actual footage and it's actual first-hand eyewitness occurrences of quote-unquote allegedly UAPs. And I swear that shit is convincing. Just imagine if a UAP could fly in the sky, right, and shut down the mechanics to a plane mid-flight and have a plane invert the stabilizers. And I mean, it doesn't sound too far-fetched, you know what I mean? Especially if it's something that we don't know of and that we can't quite, I guess, explain or figure out the science to their, you know, their meaning whoever controlling these things. Not necessarily aliens, but I guess it is, I don't know. But I think out of all these things, man, UAPs is kind of like the most scary because it's like, you don't understand what it is. Let's get into UAPs and UFOs.
Dude, the black helicopters keep flying over here too. Did they fly over our house last time? Look, now it's just hanging out.
How do you know that these were not our aircraft?
Some of the behaviors that we saw in a working area, we would see these objects being at 0.0 Mach, that's zero airspeed, over certain pieces of the ground. So what that means, just like a river, if you throw a bobber in, it's going to float downstream. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These same objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, 1.1, 1.2 Mach, and they would do so in very erratic and quick behaviors that I don't have an explanation for.
Well, hello, Todd.
And we're going to dispense with our usual banter back and forth because today we have a very special guest, Mr. Bob Pett, a glider pilot of some number of years, who has had a set of aviation experiences I think our audience will find fascinating. As many of you know who follow the podcast, we've been talking about the subject of UAP for several years now. And of course, most recently, that sort of thing has been in the news, both from congressional hearings and from mass sightings over New Jersey and New York. But we're not going to talk about events that happened in 2024, 2023. We're talking about an event that happened on August 9th, 2015. Mr. Pett was a pilot of a Grob 103, a high-performance glider, had a passenger in back. And from what I understand, this was the passenger's very first flight. And I'll let you take it from here and describe to us the day, how beautiful it was, how good the flight was, and when things turned toward the unusual.
Sure. It was one of the rare, beautiful days in the Catskills. Lift and thermals everywhere. You couldn't go wrong. You could stay up all day in a glider if you wanted to. And so I took my passenger. He'd never been in a glider before, and I wanted to get him over the mountains because that's really very scenic over there. And so we climbed up to 5,000 feet in a thermal, shot over to Windham High Peak, was over the mountains. And then I saw some other clouds to the northeast that looked very promising for very strong thermals. So we headed northeast, and we were descending. We descended till about 3,500 feet. And we're heading northeast, and all of a sudden I look down and I see this, caught my eyes, a little sparkle over the treetops. At that point, I would say it was maybe 500 feet above the ground. And my passenger also was looking down, and he said, "Hey, there's a drone down there." So we thought, oh, that's cool. We don't see many drones around here. And so I flew into a thermal, could feel the lift under my left wing. So I started turning into the thermal. And as I'm coming around my turn, I'm looking at Wyndham High Peak, and I could see the drone due to that bright little light, purplish white, kind of kaleidoscopic type colors coming off of it. And I noticed that it flew up the side of Wyndham High Peak rather fast. I mean, I'm still turning, and it reached our altitude, and then it started coming back towards us very quickly. And as I'm turning, this object came right next to my glider on my right wing. And as I'm turning, I mean, it didn't stop there. It cut right in front of me. That's why my report was a near miss. It was really close. It was right in front of me. And as I'm continuing to turn, it comes off my on my left side. I got a good look at it at that point. It was a very strange looking thing that you looked at it, you would say, this is not an aerodynamic object. There's no way this should be in the air. It was maybe 3 feet wide, 6 feet tall. It had a very luminous top to it. You couldn't really see the details of it, but underneath that luminous top was a half super black hemisphere that was just non-reflective black. And underneath that was this spike of an antenna. It looked like not a normal antenna. It was like this big gray spike that came down out of it, maybe 6 feet long. And it had these, it was gray, and it had these greenish gray plates on it, maybe 4 or 5 of them along the length of this spike. And this is all happening very quickly. I mean, we're talking seconds here. And at that point, my passenger yells to me, "Hey, 2 more just came out of the cloud above us." And that's when I started to freak out. The hair literally stood up on the back of my neck, and I felt like we were in some sort of an ambush, that we were had been observed, and and this was like the culmination of it, where all of them came together to see us somehow. And I told him, we're getting the hell out of here. I pushed the nose down as we came around the turn to head back to the airport. And he then tells me, because he had eyes on them the whole time, he said, they're heading off to the west very, very fast. So we got closer to the airport, and I flew into another thermal, and I said, I got to relax here before I try to land, chill out a little bit. So we thermaled for a while, climbed up a few thousand feet. And well, prior to that, though, after we had seen the object off my right wing or my left wing, and it started to depart with the 2 others, I radioed my soaring buddies who were up over the mountains too, and not far from me. I said, "Do you guys see anything? See what's going on over here?" And they said, "No, we haven't seen anything unusual." So, we got back to the airport. We thermaled, relaxed a little bit. We got back on the ground. Unfortunately, my camera, my phone, was in my pocket underneath my seat belts, and he didn't bring a camera with him. So his girlfriend at the time said, the 2 of you have seen something. Here's a sheet of paper. Go draw what you saw separately. And so we did that, and we came up with similar looking objects. His was more detailed because he was really staring at it, focused on it while we were turning. And then after that, that night, I called the New York State Police to report drones in the area playing, this close encounter stuff. They kind of laughed it off and told me, well, you better, tell your friends in aviation. So then I called the FAA the next day in Albany. And there's a guy there who was supposed to be tracking drone activity in the area. And he said they had no record of any drones. And then some time went by, and I found the NARCAP site about reporting anomalous behavior or sightings. And I spoke to Richard Haynes, And he asked me to file a Freedom of Information Act request with the FAA to get the radar data. And the FAA sent me back a letter that said they had lost the radar data. And so he said, well, let's escalate that to the director in Washington, D.C., either in D.C. or Atlanta. I can't remember. But that person wrote back and said, yeah, we can't provide it. It's gone. We don't have it. And so, you know, my fellow club members, you know, they saw our drawings. I said, can you guys help me find a manufacturer of something that could make something like this? You know, a lot of the guys are getting into drones at that point. And so they looked all over on the internet to try to find manufacturers of drones that resembled what we saw, and nobody could find anything close to it. And it's kind of it. I did, Richard hooked me up with some people in Seattle. And I was out there on business, and he arranged for me to have an interview with them. I think I forgot to tell you this, Todd, but they wanted to hypnotize me. It was after work. I was ready to catch a red eye home, and I wouldn't go for the hypnosis. But the guy that interviewed me told me that chances are what I saw was not from this world, and that the Earth was being visited by multiple species, intelligent species.
So yeah, man. Overall, I feel like, man, there's definitely something going on here, bro. I feel like it could definitely be the UAPs. I feel like, honestly, Elon Musk, I don't trust him no more. Never really trusted him, but I'm kind of more like zooming my lens in on him. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, how are you? And then why does Elon even want to get people IRS? That's another thing. Elon's trying to get people IRS. Like, Elon is one of the people that, like, he could be a mad scientist. He could take over the world. Like, I kind of get that vibe. Like, he might want to take over the world, you know what I'm saying? Through science, you know what I mean? But ultimately, it's a big problem going on, and I just wanted to bring this to light and, you know, get you guys' opinion on this, man. Why are all these planes falling out the sky at an alarming rate, and in the past too? You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of unexplained things. The only thing that we have to go by at the end of these crashes and these wrecks, well, the fatal ones at least, is the black box. And sometimes the black box don't tell you nothing or not enough. You know what I mean? As you've seen in part 1 to the documentary. Y'all let me know what y'all think below, man. There's definitely something going on. Whether it's Elon Musk, chemtrails, the DEI situations, mechanical errors. Definitely mechanical errors is a real thing, but I don't know, man. Y'all let me know what y'all think, man. It's a plane-demic. Excuse me. Plane-demic. Like I'm scared of fish, yeah.